Welcome to the Fit Dads podcast. I'm Brad Thompson. I'm joined by Ryan Dutton. And Ryan, this episode is for the office workers. So if you're desk bound for work, you could be suffering from stiff joints, poor posture, high stress, and low activity levels. It's reported that 2/3 of office workers sit at their desk for 6 or more hours a day, with nearly half admitting to not leaving the office at all during the day. Both myself and Ryan have helped many sedentary desk-bound clients overcome seated office cultures, and today we're going to share with you how you can do the same. So whether you work from home or you're in an office, in this episode we'll share how you can move more, be fitter, healthier, and more productive. But before we dive in, if you're enjoying the podcast, hit subscribe and leave a rating or review wherever you listen. In terms of your own experience, Ryan, of sitting for work, what's that look like for you?
A lot worse than the last few years, I would say. Do a lot more online stuff now, coaching clients all over the country, I guess all over the world as well. And this predominantly means that I'm at my office a lot more. I have picked up even little niggles. Like I've got a bit of a hip injury at the moment. I've had a few little tight calves, hamstrings. Those three right there are your classic sitting at a desk for too long injuries, aren't they? Yep. So I've found the impact on my body this past 18 months, 2 years, has definitely gone up for sure. But it's also massively affected my ability to get more steps in, to be active. And it's the same with clients that we coach, isn't it? They do find it difficult to get out and be on top of daily activity levels with such a sedentary job. But I guess that's why we're here today. We want to give the audience some ideas around how to curb that, what our key tips are, and things we've used with clients in the past.
Same, yeah. I think from experience of working with clients, you do see that there's a lot of cultural aspects, whether they're working at home or in the office. I'm going to say more difficult in the office. I think you've probably got less control over your environment, just because obviously if you're at home and you're not working at your kitchen table, if you've got a set office space, you've probably got a little bit more freedom to work with. But my own experience, I used to be a assessor working full time. So I used to be an MVQ assessor. I used to train PTs how to be PTs. I used to travel around the country, long time sat driving, listen to loads of podcasts though, so it's not all doom and gloom. But yeah, that was the one period in my life that you mentioned, niggling injuries. I've never been more injured in my life. It was horrible. Yeah, really. It felt like everything were a constant battle. That, tight muscles, weak muscles. I'm like, wow, this is rubbish. So I just struggle with that.
The body's not designed to do what we do with it. It's not designed to sit down for long periods of time. There's a fascinating study that came out recently where they were looking at like how our ancient ancestors, I'm talking like hundreds and thousands of years, more thousands if I'm being honest with you, lived before like all the modern tech and things like that and the modern way of life. And they would sit down for long periods of time, but there'd be long periods of hunting, walking, discovering, foraging. There's no way they would sit down for 5, 6, 7 hours in a row like we do today. A lot of people will literally do that. There might be small bouts of moving from one chair to another, and a prime example of that is if you're at your desk 9 till 12, you might then move from the office into the staff room and sit down in the staff room when you have your lunch, and then you move back to your office. The body wasn't designed to do that. It was designed to move more and have long periods where it's not doing those things. And then we drive home, we get in bed, we sit down in front of the sofa, we can be quite sedentary sometimes at weekends, especially if you're like a gamer as well. There's so many things that mean that activity levels are dropped nowadays. So our bodies, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is our bodies are designed to sit for long periods of time, but they're also very much designed to move for long periods of time. So we need a nice balance in everyone's day.
100%. I think the combination of the introduction of that white collar working, the office culture, the office culture where we've got a little bit more safe in his ways. We don't necessarily have to go out there in agriculture and whatever it is, like manual labour jobs. There's much more white collar work out there that is more accessible for people, which is great. It's given me and you a lot more freedom to do what we want to do. But at the same time, the combination with that and processed foods and the lack of movement, it is a recipe for disaster. So we almost have to come up with new tactics and new structures to try and help people who work in these environments that there's so much good behind them, but we almost have to counteract it. with the way that we move. And if it's all right, Ryan, I've got a few stats just to throw at people, because wouldn't be a white collar episode, would it, without throwing stats at people? So scoured the internet, and according to Champion Health, no idea who they are, 41% of employees in the UK experience musculoskeletal pain, and 17% say it negatively affects their productivity. They're the ones who said that it does affect the negatively affects their productivity. I guarantee that number's higher because it's self-reported. Yeah. In 2022, 7.3 million working days were lost due to work-related MSK disorders. So that's people calling in sick, and that's a lot of working days.
Wow.
And the other stat that I had to throw at you was the majority of office workers spend less than 30 minutes a day walking around when they're at work.
That's pretty shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really quite shocking. Alarming, and you think...
What do you think the stats will be at home? Because obviously since COVID, we've got a lot more people working from home now. I actually think from home it's even worse.
Yeah, potentially.
I think so, because the home isn't as big as your office. Yeah. Most offices. So you can't even walk around the office from office to office.
Yep.
From desk to desk.
Yeah.
I think working from home's even more of a nail in the coffin for some people.
I feel like you've almost got to be your own corporate wellness program when you work from home, because you're in control of that. Whereas if you work in a company, or I'm just thinking like a giant, bank or something like that, odds are that they've got a bit of a wellness program. They might have got facilities on site. Yeah. They almost encourage you and prompt you. Whereas if you're working from home, that's on you. You've got to choose.
Yeah.
So it's tough, man.
Agreed. That's interesting. So was that just in the UK? 7.8 was it?
7.3 million working days.
7.3 million working days lost. Mm-hmm. That is phenomenal, isn't it?
Crackers, mate. It is mad. And I suppose, where do you think the problem stems from? I've got a few theories, which I sound bad calling these people out. I'm going to call out, but I'm probably going to do it anyway.
Go for it.
I see a giant problem of probably the high up CEOs, whose responsibility it is to provide the corporate wellness structures and systems. We've worked with plenty of high profile CEOs, business owners, who take their health quite seriously, but when it comes to maybe trickling that down and transcending it to their employees, knowing what they know about productivity, they might want to keep fit and active because it helps them work, it helps them stay sharp, it helps them make better decisions. Why you maybe wouldn't choose to do that with your workforce as well, and instead just accept the lowest barometer of office culture, in terms of, you've always got sweets and treats coming in, you've got very little movement encouraged in the day, you've got like seated desks only rather than standing desks. I appreciate I'm making this sound very, very easy in terms of, just get everyone a standing desk. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it does make a bit of a difference, but there's a huge problem in people having, the lack of movement in the day and affecting their productivity. And as an owner, as a business owner, as a leader, it's your responsibility to look after them.
I'm really happy you've highlighted that, because it trickles down from the top, doesn't it?
Yep.
And there's a massive movement now for exercise and well-being within the workforce and within the workplace. But all you have to do is look at your CEO. Mm-hmm. Look at them. What do they look like? Are they in shape? Are they fit? Are they doing stuff at the weekends? Do you hear about them exercising? Are they telling you about some things they've got going on, training-wise? Do they just genuinely care about keeping themselves in shape? Because if they do, that's going to be a genuine message and standpoint that they take with their own workforce. I think there's a lot of CEOs who get, coaches in, get facilities in place, but don't really truly believe in the well-being aspects of it. They just know it's ticking a box, and it might be like a great way of, headhunting some people in certain industries. We've got this program where you can stay in shape and we'll help you kind of be fit, and we encourage this. It's part of our kind of pulling point as a business. But how many CEOs genuinely believe that is the case?
It's a tough one, because if you are a CEO or you're a middle manager, I have a lot of chats with this about middle management, where they say, well, that's just how it is. My boss is not bothered about investing in gym gear or investing in anything. If you're a middle manager and you can make the workforce more productive, your boss is going to love you. And if you know that comes from movement, it might be a case of getting someone in for a workshop. It might be a case of reaching out to someone like Pete, who we've had on from the fitness truck. He literally comes to you. So as far as an expenditure, he comes to you. He's literally the gym that comes to you, and I love that about Pete. He's really passionate about it. But just in terms of getting other people in, like, do we need education in the office? Do we need a culture shift? How do you change culture? And it's probably, from a top-down approach. So the decision makers have to make, the choice ultimately.
I love what Pete does, where he goes into businesses and provides exercise sessions. I think that's something that if I had my own business where I had multiple employees and a big workforce, no doubt about it, I'd be providing something like that 100%. And I think Pete's like your baseline service there, where you can get him in once a week, let's say, and just give them a session. But there's so many levels to that. I'm going to point out a really, really good example now, something I've written down here. So there's a brand called Represent. Do you know Represent? They've got an owner, or two owners who are brothers, George and Michael Heaton. George, more so than Mike, is massively into exercise, training, into the hybrid style of kind of exercising, shall we say. He loves his runs, trains, lifts heavy, but also he wants to project that into his workforce. So what they did at their HQ in Manchester is they built a whole section that's just a gym. And this is better than most commercial gyms, this thing. And he has trainers come in, and I think they're fully employed by the business to come in and deliver sessions pretty much every day. Like if they want to put them on. If people want to go to them, they can go to them pretty much most days, I think. And this facility is amazing. They've got amazing kit, some of the best coaches, and what an amazing service that is. And he says that people want to work for us, and we can headhunt whoever we want because we provide such a good system around being able to stay in shape, and they're allowed to have an extra hour in the day to go and train. And I'm not sure whether that's just when the PTs come in, or whether they can use that hour somewhere else, and whether they can just go and use it at any point in the day if they don't want to do specifically a class. But there's a huge movement towards, like, let's get the workforce training, let's get them fit, let's get them feeling good about themselves, and that's going to hopefully relay into like job satisfaction, productivity, and ultimately the business's bottom line.
Put it this way, if your workforce is happy, odds are they're going to progress and want to work hard. I think that makes a big difference. Like, anyone who stood at the door with the coat, over the shoulder at 5 to 5, you're probably not going to get that with people who are happy at work. If people are a little bit like, I'm clocking off at 5 to 5, and they stood there like with the shoes on, ready to shoot out the door. You want people who are really happy and healthy. And look, I feel like I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole there of almost looking at the top down. But if you are someone who is on the front line or a middle manager, this next bit's probably really geared towards yourself and how you can take action and ownership of your own health and your own activity levels when you're at work. A common problem I see, Ryan, is people getting confused between tight muscles and weak muscles. So if you do sit down a lot, you're going to have certain muscles that are weak and certain muscles that are tight. And all I mean by that is I speak to so many people who maybe have issues with the upper back and the lower back. Odds are those two areas are either not mobile enough or weak. And if you think about the supporting structures of the back, imagine the upper back, for example, the rhomboids, the traps, if they start to be constantly lengthened or chronically lengthened, you get the feeling of tightness, where actually you're going to need to strengthen up that area. You're going to need to do more rowing, more face pulls, more lower back work to potentially strengthen up that area of muscles, essentially, that are switched off, dare I say, during the day. So knowing the difference between tightness versus weakness was a game changer when I started working with more white collar workers.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think you're absolutely right. I think look at how people sit. They tend to sit with a rounded arch back. Their legs are obviously bent at the hips, they're bent at the knees, causing tight hip flexors, tight hamstrings, potentially tight calves as well. And these are sometimes tight, but like I said, sometimes weak as well. And I'm sometimes shocked at how often I get clients and they say, right, I work 9 till 5, I very rarely move, I don't do a lot of exercise, and I'm thinking this person's going to be stiff as a board. So I start playing around with them, and I'm like, actually, your hamstrings aren't too bad. I'm actually quite surprised at how good they are. But the posture's terrible. So it's not a stiffness issue. Sometimes it's a strength issue. And if we can start tightening up those and strengthening those hamstrings, if we can start tightening up that back in the right way, pulling the shoulder blades back, sometimes the chest gets quite tight, when those shoulders drop forwards and you become internally rotated, those pecs from shoulder to shoulder now start shortening, shrinking, and it's not that they can't kind of open themselves up, it's just the pecs are so tight that it's pulling them back in, it's pulling them back into that very rounded position. So actually stretching off the pecs is a massive thing when it comes to having really good upper body posture. But yeah, I'm really happy you've highlighted that, because I think we're going to get onto like how to move more and how to be less sedentary, but it all starts with posture and feeling good and correcting some of the wrongs that are happening from this continual process of sitting down for so long, Monday to Friday.
I think when it comes to posture in particular, a lot of people think that they can manually just change the posture. So if they think, right, I'm going to start my day off, and for anyone who's watching, you'll gradually start seeing my posture deteriorate. So it's a conscious effort. They've got the chest out, they've got the shoulders back, and then as the day goes on, they start to like slump forward until eventually they're like molded into the chair. What you want to do is like what Ryan said, stretch out the chest, make sure your upper back's nice and strong. So subconsciously, you don't have to rely on that consciously. You want your brain power to be on your work. I don't want your brain power being on your posture. So you almost have to tailor your training and your activities to try and better that, to get stronger in the right areas, to release tension in the tighter areas. That, as a take-home message, I really want everyone to pay attention to that.
Yeah. I'm happy you've mentioned that, because that's something I mentioned to clients as well. It's like, you're going to go into the day with the best intentions. You might listen to this podcast, go away and go, right, that's it. I'm going to sit a bit more upright. I'm going to push my bum back into the chair. I'm going to push my chest out, pull my shoulder blades back. Within minutes, you will be back where you started, and you go, shit, how did I get back here? I was there, I set off with great intentions. This all happened continuously throughout the day, and it's completely fine, it's completely normal, it's going to happen. But over time, if you keep correcting yourself and keep going back into that position, over time you'll find that you're spending longer periods of time before you slump back into the kind of slouch position. Sometimes it's very uncomfortable for people and very unnatural for them to sit with good posture. So I think that it's going to be a continual process of like catching yourself, messing up, but over time having longer stretches where you are sat with good posture.
I'm going to let you in on a bit of a drill that I take my guys through when I first take on an in-person client in particular. Something called the perfect posture drill, which I love doing. And if you're watching, listening, you can do this right now, unless you're driving. Don't do this while you're driving. You can literally put your hands on your shoulders, get your elbows back as far as you can, and then from there, let me do that again. Hands on your shoulders, get your elbows back as far as you can, and then get them down as far as you can. Okay. And then from there, just let your hands sort of drop down. If you opened up a textbook, that's roughly what you'd see, like the anatomy of Ryan, for example, where your palms are facing out. Gradually over time, if you just relax into your normal posture, you'll be able to see like the drop off in posture, what happens. And that'll almost tell you what optimal is. And that's how I try and encourage people to train. So when we're doing rows, I want you to go through that perfect posture drill, hands on your shoulders, elbows back, elbows down, let your arms drop, and then try and imagine your upper body's going to stay in that position. That for me really highlights to people how far off their posture is from optimal.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you need to always train to be optimal. I'm saying if you can train for that awareness, because what you train, you will sustain. And I'm a big believer in that, where just that little drill, hands on your shoulders, elbows back, elbows down, and then let your arms drop and just see where your posture ends up.
So you start from like A1 and then you see how far it regresses when you just relax.
It's amazing when I say to people like, right, now just relax, stand as you normally would, and then just seeing like shoulders slump, and it's amazing to see. Cool. Yeah. I
also think as well, there's probably no such thing really as the perfect posture. No. There's ways we can get you into a more favourable posture, but I think everybody's unique as well, and we don't want to go down too much to the rabbit hole of posture, because we could spend a whole episode on this.
Exactly.
But it is also what works for you. We don't need your kind of, a lot of people from typing on keyboards all day, their knuckles face up, the palms face down. When they put their hands back by the sides, they stay there.
Yeah.
So the palms, as they put their hands by their side, the palms face behind them and the knuckles face forwards. That's not very good for the shoulder. It's not a great position for your shoulder joint to be sat in. We want to try and open it back out, but no one's ever going to walk around with hands that are like where the palms are facing inwards and the knuckles are facing outwards away from them. It just isn't going to happen. Like, no one's going to walk around with their palms like that. So if that's not the case, can we find a nice happy medium where we're not too detriment on the internal rotation of the shoulder, but it's also open enough so we can do some pretty functional things, whether it's overhead pressing or other exercises in the gym.
I never realised how mank you sound until I heard you say palm numerous times.
Palm.
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 Palm. There you go. There we go.
Is that the mank twang going
Yeah,
there?
yeah, that way. Yeah, just stuck out to me there, mate. So you said it a few times. I'm like, it's like saying car.
Sunshine. I'll be saying that next. It's funny actually, I saw a video completely off topic here. Obviously the Oasis kind of frenzy is on the go at the moment, and there's this video going around of Liam on stage going, anyone want some lasagna? And he sounds so mank, and even I as a mank was like, that is such a mank thing to say, lasagna.
Lasagna. I want to know why he's saying that.
I don't know.
As well.
It's completely out of context, but I think it's just him being him, isn't it? Random rock star chat.
That's it.
Right, back on active then. So
here we go.
Let's talk about ways that we can get people moving, because that's probably the main thing that people lack. You know, we need to move on a daily basis. We need to move for blood flow. We need to move for health. We need to move for fat loss. And we need to move to make every function in the body operate more effectively. But if you're sitting down for a long period of time, that's not going to be the case. So what would you recommend in terms of practical advice to get people moving more on a daily basis?
The majority of my clients now will roll their eyes because I'm going to talk about something called the Pomodoro technique. Pomodoro technique,
Lovely.
Which is when you identify a task that you need to do. So let's say you've got your work day planned out, you know what tasks you need to do, and you say, right, I'm going to set a timer now for 25 minutes. I'm going to get my head down and I'm going to go. I'm going to work on that task, no distractions, headphones on, just get it done. When the alarm sounds, take a 5-minute break and just get up, walk around, move around a little bit.
How long would you set that timer for?
For maybe 5 minutes.
Okay.
So maybe 25 minutes, set a timer of intense work, and then a timer to go off, wait 5 minutes, and then repeat maybe 3 more times. Cool. That's the Pomodoro technique. Once you've done it 3 times, then I'd look at taking like a bit of a longer, it says here 30-minute break, which is the recommended thing from the proper Pomodoro technique. A lot of that is out of people's control. But if you're working from home, you'd be surprised what that intense, just shy of 90 minutes is going to do for you. You'd be really shocked of how much you can get done.
Yeah, I've heard of that technique, but didn't know it was called that. I think sometimes 25 minutes is quite a short period of time.
Yeah.
I'd find that short for me.
Yeah.
If I was probably recommending that to other people and clients, I'd probably say more along the lines of every hour. Just so set an hour timer, because it's so easy to get caught up, and before you know it, 2, 3, 4 hours has passed and you're like, shit, I've been doing the same task, and especially when it's quite engrossing. So every hour I would say, get up, go move for like 5, 10, maybe even 15 minutes if you can push it, and then crack back on with another hour's work. Because around that hour, mentally you can start to kind of fatigue a little bit anyway. It depends what you're doing. Sometimes in my day doesn't always work in terms of hour blocks. I can do a task for like 30 minutes and then I've got a little bit of a pause. I've got a 2-hour task now I need to do. I'll go and do that. It depends how your day's split up, whether it's with calls and meetings. Sometimes they're quite limited. But as soon as those things are done, rather than just cracking straight into the next task, have that pause, have that kind of moment to be like, right, get up out your desk, get up out, go into the garden. Even better, just go for a walk, for sure. It goes without saying really that I definitely think that utilising your lunch break is so important. Like, if the worst thing you can do is work 9 till 12:30, and then at 12:30 you go and sit in the staff room, you go and sit in the living room, you go and sit in the kitchen. Yes, grab a quick bite to eat for sure, but as soon as that food's been consumed, get yourself out for your walk. Or, even better, walk first and then eat when you get back.
100%. Yeah. Genuinely, I can't gripe about anything you've just said there. You see it a lot where almost people go to the gym or they go for a run or whatever, and they almost work up an appetite rather than just mindlessly cramming their face at the desk, which that distracted eating's probably another topic. But yeah, in terms of actually getting moving and getting up and around, I like the fact that you can be in control of your time blocks. If you are in back-to-back meetings for like 3 or 4 hours, I'm probably going to question more time management and organisation, because we know what it's like if we do 3 or 4 sessions back-to-back. Yeah. That 4th session massively drops off from the first. Yeah, because
sometimes you can't get around that though. Like I totally sympathise with people who do have meetings back to back for sometimes like 6 hours in a row. Yeah, there's nothing you can do. Those days aren't going to be every day, by the way. No. I know people who are very busy in meetings, and even those days are few and far between. Maybe once in a week, let's say. The rest of the kind of day, you've got to look at like moving more and dedicating more time to kind of getting out there, increasing your step count. I think an exercise bike at home is a bloody brilliant shout as well. Like, you know, just having that while you're kind of having a break, while you're having your lunch, just jump on an exercise bike. Moving on more along the lines of like equipment to have at home. The most obvious thing that's on the big rise at the moment is what we call a walking pad, which is essentially a very small version of a treadmill that you can put under your desk.
Yeah.
This does for sure rely on you having a standing desk,
Yeah.
but not necessarily. I mean, let's say you're on a call with someone. If it's a face call, you could just set your phone up on a shelf somewhere, put the walking desk, also the walking pad underneath you. You could, if it's a call, you could just walk. Yes, you might be a little bit heavy in the breathing, but you know, I'm sure you can mention to them that you're on your walking pad. I've got a client who's Mitch. I'm gonna have to give him a shout out because he's phenomenal at this. He's got a walking pad last year, and he'll do like 6-7 hours a day on the walking pad. He's clocking up unbelievable amounts of steps. And whenever I have a booking a call with him, it's always around like 12, 1 o'clock, and he's just kind of like in this groove now. He's getting the speed up, and the whole call is just him on this treadmill. So I can hear it, but it's not. I can still hear him, and I can still hear the kind of what he's got to say. It's not too distracting.
Yeah.
But for you, as someone who's sitting down, I can't stress enough. Like, you know, it's a phenomenal resource, a walking pad.
Good on him as well. And I've wrote down a phrase here, which is modern problems require modern solutions. You might have seen that as a meme of this bold American guy just sort of pointing at you saying, modern problems require modern solutions.
No.
And I like that because it is a modern problem. You think inactivity, you have to come up with more modern solutions to combat it, because just relying on, you know, that game of squash at weekend, or, you know, going at gym once, twice a week, probably not going to combat it when you sat stationary for 6+ hours a day. So the standing desks, I'll be honest, are going to be game changers for a lot of people, just so you can move around, you know. Absolutely. Just so you're not actually crunched up in this position. You can stand, you can get mobile. And I always think about this, where if I've got an important call to make, I'll not sit down. Like, if it's not a face call, I'll walk around.
Yeah.
Like, I'll pick the phone up and I'll walk around. That's just showed my age, that, doing that, rather than this, what youngins are doing now.
The old people do that,
yeah,
and the new school people do that.
But no, I think that just, and there's a reason for that. I feel like you can think better when you're moving around.
Yeah.
There was a guy. Listen, I'll shout out the podcast. Actually, I think it was "You're Dead to Me," a BBC Sounds podcast. Amazing, and they spoke about one of the guys on there. A really famous thinker who, unfortunately, his name eludes me, but he didn't trust a thought unless he had it when he was walking. And I cannot remember the guy's name, so it's going to stress me out now. I will find that. But apparently he would say, nope, if I have a thought when I'm sat down, don't trust it. I'm going to walk around. I'm going to get the blood pumping.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I agree with that, because you can have, I mean, some of my best ideas are literally lay down in bed before I go to sleep.
Fair.
But probably just shows the power of how much he trusts walking and exercise, and how much he trusts the power of thought as a result of that.
Which, it just fascinated me, the fact that it's almost like a natural instinct, where if you need to if you need to think, odds are that you want to walk around a little bit, you'll want to pace, you'll want to do something. So people ignoring that natural feeling is quite an interesting one. Most of it's just a habit. Like, you need to almost disrupt the pattern. You know, maybe what signal can you throw at you to disrupt the pattern? Is it a timer that goes off? Is it having, I don't know, your dog walk into the room and being like, I need to go and walk them, actually. So it's different things that you want, those penciled in, not distractions, but then penciled in prompts. One of my old managers, Shane Beard, had an amazing saying, which was prompt, report, which is like, you almost want as many prompts as you need to until it becomes like a normal process. Does that make sense?
Just habits and routine.
Just habits, yeah. Just have some prompts in your way to essentially get you ready for what's coming.
I think that's brilliant. I think it's all about setting habits that aren't already there. So when it comes to movement, you'll know, like, if you've had a bad week, a bad month, a bad few months of not really moving much, you feel shit. Feel you know it's not right. You know it feels icky. You feel like unhealthy when you don't move. I've got a lady starting tomorrow morning who, same thing, like, she spent many years just being sedentary, working her way up the ladder. Now got to a really nice position, but she just feels horrible about herself. Like, I've achieved a lot, but I've regressed a lot as well. Achieved a lot in my career, done a lot. Now I'm at a point where I hate my body and I hate what I've become as a result of chasing the career. And she doesn't regret doing the career stuff because she's got herself to a really nice place, but now she's in a position where she knows that it's come at a cost and it's time to start undoing that cost and getting back in some good habits. And the first thing we've got to do is get a walking pad. First thing we've got is a standing desk now. And the process starts for her of turning from that sedentary home-based worker to now incorporating healthier habits into her routine. And it's going to be tough. She's going to mess up. She's going to have days where the walking pad just is an effort and she can't be asked. But over time, we're going to improve those things. We're going to set the timers. We're going to make sure that she's if she's out and about as well in the office, for example, she's having moments where she's setting timers and she's able to walk around and go outside, have calls on the go. I've got a lot of clients who have calls, but every time they have a call, they'll head into the park, the local park. Obviously, you want to make sure that it's not a busy park and it's not loud, and noisy. I think that's a great bit of advice as well when it comes to staying active but also being productive.
A key phrase that I've tried to lean into quite heavily recently is more often than not. So if you're someone who works 5 days a week in an office, if you can maybe utilise your lunch break more often than not, that's only 3 days. Like 3 days out of the 5, if you can do that more often than not, if you can try and shoot for a step target more often than not, you've more than likely got your weekends to yourself in terms of you're not structured with work. So you can you've got more time to move. You've got more time to incorporate movement into your day because you don't have to be sat down unless you want to be. So I really like the fact of more often than not. If you take working days, 3 out of the 5, it's a good place to start, rather than saying you must do this every day.
I totally agree. But a common trend that I've seen is if people are more sedentary Monday to Friday, they're generally more sedentary over the weekend. Because there's more resistance from the body. There's 7 days in the week, and 5 of those, the overwhelming majority, you're sat not moving much. When it gets to the weekend, chances are your body's probably not going to be as enthusiastic and as sprightly when it comes to getting up and moving. It's going to feel horrible. It's not going to feel pretty. You're going to get out there and there's going to be a lot of resistance. The body's not used to kind of pumping blood around the body. So it's vitally important that you utilise the days that you can. But I do think that, like you said, if you can just focus on one day during the week where you make sure you're quite active, maybe it's on a quieter day with work, a day where you start a little bit later, clock off a little bit earlier. Maybe it's the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, you're making sure you are increasing your weekly average of step count on those 2 days. So if you're only getting an average of 5,000 steps, 4,000 steps Monday to Friday, can you then go 15,000 on a weekend to try and boost that average up to the kind of 10,000 average for the week? There's little things you can do right now with what you've got, and then over time you're thinking, right, maybe I can just do an extra call while I'm walking on a Monday. I've got those calls on a Thursday morning, I'll do those while I'm walking. I'll get my walking pad out for an hour. I'll make sure that I go for even just 10-15 minutes on your lunch break. It all adds up over the week.
Great shout. And I probably wanted to dive into the origins of 10,000 steps. Like why that came into fruition. And when I messaged you last night and said, mate, I've got a mad stat, like I've got a crazy stat about 10,000 steps, you know where it comes from?
No, I don't know why this is the kind of magic number. I assumed it was just because it's a nice whole round number. And when it comes to steps, we work in thousands, don't we? And generally for most people, 10,000 is actually quite difficult to hit if you are relatively sedentary in your job.
I will ask those sort of questions like, well, why 10,000? So I asked Google as to why 10,000.
Okay.
And I'm going to try and read it out word for word, but I'll come away from it a bit. The idea of walking 10,000 steps a day was invented as part of a marketing campaign for the early pedometer ahead of the 1964 Tokyo Olympics.
Interesting.
And the Japanese character for 10,000 looks like a person walking. So the device was called, and this is where I'm going to test my Japanese now, Manpoki, or 10,000 steps meter.
Oh, wow.
Do you want to see what the symbol is?
I'm 100%. I really want to see it.
Ready? Look at this.
Interesting. That means 10,000, does it?
Yeah, that means 10,000 in Japanese.
Got to show the viewers.
But hang on. Let me get a better one.
If you're listening as well, maybe this is worth a Google.
Yeah, this is not the best for an audio medium, but that is, let's see if I can get it, 10,000 steps in Japanese. It's a symbol that looks like
It looks like a T, doesn't it?
it does look like a T. Looks like somebody walking.
Looks like a T and a H.
Yeah, yeah. Which it does. It looks
Start 1,000.
It looks a little bit like somebody walking. But yeah, I think people knowing that it's not really scientifically backed in a way. It's just like part of a marketing campaign, which all that time ago in 1964.
But I think there's a reason why certain things stick, even for that longer period of time. Even back then, they will have found out like what people's general averages were and how can we boost it up to a healthy level. And when was that campaign?
1964.
You would think in 1964 there was less kind of office-based jobs, less home-based jobs. I mean, there definitely was for sure. But for even back then, for them to be saying everyone needs to be hitting 10,000, you would think it'd be slightly higher because there was a lot more blue-collar jobs, things like that.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that number's still around today just shows the importance of how good actually the number of 10,000 is. And again, a call with a lady last night on a consultation. She said, "I've lost 5.5 stone." I was like, Jesus, like, the part of you thinking, you know, why are you coming here? I said, what the secret? She goes, I just cut down my portion sizes and I make sure I hit 10,000 a day. So she's followed some very, very basic information and lost 5.5 stone.
Wow.
Phenomenal, right? Now, it's not that easy for everyone, unfortunately, but it just shows that some of this generalised information stays popular and stays around because it is effective, for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, to be honest, I just really like that stat. I like the thought of there is some truth behind it, like you said. There's a reason why it's stuck around. And look, when it comes to other people shooting for that number, I always like to give people the context as to, okay, why that number? Why not 11? Why not 9? If you're currently doing an average of 5,000 a week, why are you going straight for 10? That's literally double.
Yeah.
Why don't you go for 6 and then next week go for 7 and just make it so easy for yourself that you feel a bit silly not doing it?
That's the best advice, because also as well, when people don't continuously hit the 10,000 steps, because it is such a big jump. If you're only hitting 5, then 1 week you go, right, I'm going to go for it this week, and you do genuinely increase your weekly average to 10,000 steps a day. How maintainable is that? In a month's time, when it's dropped off and work creeps back in and you've not prioritised it as much and you're back down to like 6 or 7, it's easy to feel quite dejected actually. But if in a month's time you've increased your... Well, if you're at 5,000 steps and you're increasing it to 7,000 steps, you've now increased it by, what's that, 35, 40%?
Yeah.
35, 40% increase on your activity levels on a daily basis is still really good over the space of a month. Phenomenally good, I would say. So cool. Well, let's stick at 7,000, cement that in your habits and your techniques throughout the day, things that you're doing to move more. And then over time we go, right, can we now boost that to 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 in a very slow and controlled way?
I suppose my problem with hearing stuff like this in the past is it's like when people say, oh, just get 8 hours sleep, then they give you a high five and then walk away. And it's like, well, how do I do that? So I'm really keen to say to people, you probably already know this, if you work in a big office block and you've got, lift or stairs, odds are depending on if it's busy or not, you might not choose the stairs, you might just jump straight in the lift. It's just making them little changes. I don't know. I'll be honest.
Factoring it into your day.
Yeah, and
I'll as part of like the daily habit thing that you do. I don't take the lift, I take the stairs. Parking as far away in the car park as you can. It might be only an extra 20 seconds, but 20 seconds there, 20 seconds back, twice a day, 3 times a day. Maybe like 10, 15 times a week. All adds up over the space for a week, a month, a year. It really is as simple as that sometimes.
Probably just want to come back to those people who are maybe back to back with meetings, or they physically cannot get up and move around. Andrew Huberman, a bit of a legend, bit of one of my heroes, mate. He's come across something called Soleus push-ups. You heard about these before?
Soleus push-ups?
Soleus push-ups. No. So if this is brand new to anyone, the soleus is located just underneath your calf, and it's quite a thick sort of fibrous tissue. Plays a really important part in standing and walking. Can you tell I'm reading this? Unlike other muscles that rely quite heavily on glycogen, so when you move around, you rely quite a lot on carbs to essentially fill up the muscles and move us around. The soleus uses a combination of glucose and fat, which we can use that for extended periods without fatigue, which is why it's so useful for moving around. Now, soleus push-ups come into it because it's essentially, you do calf raises. You do calf raises sat down. So I've been doing it, mate, whilst I've been sat here. Just pumping away.
Calf dumps tomorrow.
Literally.
I have to carry you back to the car.
Literally lifting your heels up as high as you can and then dropping them down. That has been shown to give quite a decent cardio burn, like good cardio results and quite a decent calorie burn as well.
Interesting. Okay.
And they base that on people who, I think, surface area of the body, I think it's only 1%, but it's a really powerful muscle. So I think if you can contract that a little bit more and just think, if you're sat at a desk, if you're sat down listening to this right now, just lift your heels up, squeeze, drop back down. If you get cramp, bear with us, it will fade. But I think more and more, if you can just get into that habit of, let me just try and keep some blood pumping. It's a bit like when you're on a plane and you can't move, and they say, all right, what's your, how do you get some blood pumping? Can you move around a little bit? Can you stand up and nip to loo? You want to keep some blood pumping. And Soleus push-ups, there's some really good information behind it. There's a fantastic bit of research that goes behind it. I'm not going to say this is a solution, but if you have no other choice and you are sat there, these Soleus push-ups could be quite useful.
It's brilliant. And I even think alongside that, maybe even throwing in some actual push-ups.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yes, you can't do that while you're in meetings. You might get some funny looks. But alongside maybe a walking pad, alongside a bike, alongside going out at lunch break for some walks. Mitch, who I was talking about a second ago, he's got the walking pad, who does a lot of steps in the day. He has moments where, maybe like 2-3 times a day, he'll just do like a little routine of press-ups, push, squats. Might do some static lunges. You might do some split squats. You might go and do a plank. You might go and do a wall sit. There's a plethora of bodyweight based exercises that you can do just for like 10-20 reps each. Brilliant. Crack back on with your work. That's got the heart rate pumping. It's a little mini circuit. It might take if you can do it quick, it might take tops 5 minutes and you're back in. That's kind of probably more. It's going to take more prep. It's going to take more programming, and it's going to maybe fatigue you a little bit more. There's probably some prerequisites to being able to do those exercises like push-ups as well, but all variations of. But I do think that for working muscles alongside everything else, and actually building a little bit of core strength, body strength, we've spoke a lot about how to stay active, walking. It's all very cardio heavy. You mentioned these Soleus push-ups.
Yeah.
This just got my mind ticking around. How can we actually start incorporating actual exercise, movements that are going to build some strength and muscle?
As you were talking then, I cast my mind back to lockdown, and I'm really sorry if people shuddered as I said that. But I've got a friend who, he called me one day when everything were, kicking off with lockdown and they were implementing all these restrictions and stuff. He owned quite a big company, and he was stressed out of his brain, and I could see him reaching towards some unfavourable habits, should we say. So he says, I just feel so stressed, I don't know what to do. And we agreed, we're like, right, why don't every time you get stressed in a day, or you finish a meeting and you go, that was awful, can you just drop and give us a plank, just as intense as you can for like 20 seconds, just almost take out frustration. And I didn't know it at the time, but he was doing that 10 times a day.
Jesus.
Just 20 seconds, drop it into a plank, squeezing everything as hard as he could. When he got back into the gym, he was so strong. His core was just insanely strong. His big lifts went through the roof, and this were like after 6 months.
Wow.
But his big lifts went through the roof. His compounds were just outstanding.
Amazing. And
he did say it really helped him, because he almost got into that habit of, let me just develop that strength, just intense 20 seconds, stand up, kick on.
A great way of expending pent up stress and anxiousness. Doing something positive for him, that's meaning like I'm turning a real negative here, a stressful situation, into something that might benefit me and makes me feel good. And number 3, the knock-on effects of all of those things, they can be great. Less stressed, more strength, better performance.
I think we ended up calling it the stress plank, and I'm really proud of him for that, because he stuck to it. He didn't just reach for the bottle, he didn't just do some mad stuff like you were thinking about doing. He just said, right, that were an awful meeting, that was some bad news. Stress plank didn't fix everything, but it were almost like his work equivalent of screaming into a pillow.
On stress balls. And the stress balls, you don't really get those anymore, do you?
No.
But I really like that flip and that switch and putting something positive on a negative situation. I feel really bad for the bloke that he was doing it 10 times a day. That's a really stressful day. But it doesn't have to be plank. I mean, if you wanted to incorporate that, you could do push-ups, you could do squats, you could do a wall sit. loads of things you could do.
Yeah. I think it's like spreading out almost like an hour's gym session throughout 8 hours, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Much more difficult to do if you're in an office, I get that. But if you're at home, like, who's stopping you?
Yeah, you might do you might do like every hour throughout the day. You have 8 different bodyweight based exercises, and on the hour, every hour, you do 10, 20, 40, 50, maybe even 100. Yeah. And then you crack back on where you work. And then you might find that actually those 10 move to 20 reps, they move to 50 reps, they move to 100 reps, and you're banging them out, and then you crack back on where you work. I think that's a really good way of doing it. I really do. Having like a list of 8 different exercises, all different muscles, that you're just doing throughout the day. If you've got a pair of dumbbells around that you can put in the office or in your kind of home office, that might be quite cool to use. You can then start incorporating with some bicep curls, overhead presses.
100%, or bands, if you can do some band pull aparts, some banded rows, if you can find something to anchor it with. But I suppose just to give the audience a bit of something tangible, strengthening exercises that you could maybe do, because again, we've mentioned a lot of cardio stuff. I do think mid-back, I think that's going to be a key one. So band pull aparts, face pulls, all that sort of stuff. Your thoracic spine, like right in between where your rib cage is, if you can get some movement in there, whether it's, when was the last time anyone rotated, unless it were passing, turning behind to pass kids something in back seat.
There's a brilliant exercise called threading the needle, where you get onto all fours on your knees and hands. You slide your hand behind your other hand. This is not going to make a lot of sense to people who can't see this, but you're essentially on all fours, you slide that way, and you open right back out. That movement right there as a bodyweight based exercise is phenomenal for spinal rotation, actually working some of those back muscles. If you have a little look at what's called threading the needle, that's an amazing exercise to throw in there. Again, a bodyweight one you could do. I tend to do this in like an alternating fashion, so you do one on your right, one on your left. That's brilliant. Again, posturally awesome. Yeah.
And I think even glutes and hamstrings, they're 2 big ones that we try and focus on. You think about when you sit down, your glutes are long, man. Your glutes are really long. I don't like saying the word switched off, but give them some stimulation, whether that's some hip bridges, some single leg glute bridges, something like that. And then obviously hamstrings, they're chronically shortened, so they could feel tight, but they could actually be weak. So something to maybe work on the hamstrings a little bit.
Again, round the house, glute bridges, double legs, single legs, isometric holds on your glutes. Just land on the floor, single legs, double legs. There's some great practical ideas that you can fit into this kind of weekly or daily little workout that you're doing around the office, around the home office as well. You
can get some furniture sliders if you've used these before, where you put your heels.
That's right. The slide that you usually use them on AstroTurf and stuff, but you can use them on the carpet, I guess, as well.
They're really cool, especially for hamstrings, because it is quite hard to get hamstring exercises specifically. So I really like them.
They're brilliant for that. I know what you mean. It's basically almost like a glute bridge, but you
like
drive your
curl.
Heels backwards and forwards while they're on the pads, as opposed to lifting your hips up.
Yeah, which I really like them. Anything else you'd add for the audience, maybe from a strengthening exercise point of view?
I mean, we could go on for a while listing lots of different exercises, but some fantastic bodyweight exercises, like I've mentioned: press-ups, planks, wall sits, static lunges, reverse lunges. I think glute bridges. If you can do it, pike plank as well, where you can have on all fours and you lift your hips up, a bit like a press up, but you do it for shoulders. You can raise your feet up on that one as well, maybe on your office chair or your desk. Maybe I'm kind of I don't know. Be careful where you put your feet, because you end up your broom might go everywhere there. But I think they're probably your essential ones. Then things like I've mentioned planks, but also there's something called a crunch kick, dead bugs, thread the needle. All these, I mean, you probably got 15 exercises right there that you can do on a rota throughout the week.
I always have a bit of an issue when there's really great information out there and then people absorb it and then don't do anything with it. So if you're listening to this and you think, I know all them. I know all of them that Ryan's just said, or I know majority of those, you really need to try and disrupt that signal now. Maybe look and think, right, what can I do to put that into practice? How can I do that? Can you layer on some habits? Can you send some emails via your phone whilst you're in a wall sit? Can we start layering on some things? Because that sort of habit stacking is going to be really important for everyone listening, really, especially if you're sat down for work a lot. we really need you to start thinking, how can I move more? How can I just get some blood pumping around my body? Because it'll make you better physically, mentally, more productive. And that, I suppose, Ryan, with a point in this episode, and I'm glad that we've not only gone down the cardio route of let's move more, let's just anything, let's just move anything, compared to let's get strong as well.
Yeah.
Let's do some movements.
Yeah. Love the fact you mentioned that as well, like about it needs to be something you go away now and actively try and weave into your life. The same way, like when we sit in the toilet, no one's sat there in silence, are they? Everyone's on the phone, or they're reading a book or a magazine. They're doing something, right?
Yeah.
You're multitasking. And it's something we've done over time because we know that it's dead space, it's dead time. Well, sometimes when you send in very boring and basic emails, there could be a way you can make that more interesting. You could do a wall sit. You could.
Yeah.
You could be doing a plank while kind of like you're typing away with your hands. There's things you can do where you go, right, that's a mundane task that I know how to do quite easily. I do it every single day, every single week. Is there something exercise-based, strength-based, movement-based I can do while I'm doing these more mundane tasks? Some things are going to take a lot of your brain power. You're going to have certain meetings with executives and bosses and things like that mean that, you know, they're not going to be too impressed if they come onto the call and you're doing push-ups in front of them. But there's certain tasks in your day that you can weave exercises and strength work and steps into. That's the space in your day where you've got to really push this stuff and have a bit of a plan and a strategy for it. So go and write down, go rewind this podcast now, write down all the exercises that we've mentioned, go back and pick out the ones that you really like, know what you can do, and start trying them on a daily basis. Have one day where you go, right, you know what, I'm going to do 4 exercises today. I'm going to do one on the hour every hour, or on the every 2 hours. Start weaving it into your life, literally, as of this week.
And if you are someone who maybe lacks the control of not working from home, say you are someone who maybe is in an office, you're a middle manager, you're a CEO, like you need to be the change now.
Yeah.
You need to be the one to make an influence, even if it's just yourself. And I've always said this, if you're trying to get a family member or a friend into exercise, the worst thing you can do is drag them along kicking and screaming. You may as well just go and make the change yourself and then wait for them to join by their own accord.
Yeah.
I've always said that's in my opinion, the best way to do it. Same goes with if you want to get your partner involved in exercise, have that chat, tell them it's important to you, but you need to just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, agreed. Couldn't agree more. Anything else you want to add to the sedentary office workers being more active?
Just to, again, probably encourage people to reach out to us and let us know. Maybe if you are someone of exceptional circumstance and you want a little bit more specific advice, reach out to us. We're always willing to advise and help. Granted, we've got enough context, so
yeah. Absolutely. Probably the best place to reach us, I guess, is probably through social media. Your Thompson Training.
Yeah, I'm at Thompson Training _.
And I'm at r5.online. And more than happy to answer questions. So reach out to us for sure.
Just leave it there, mate.
Brilliant. Guys, if you enjoyed the podcast, again, subscribe, leave a rating. We'd love that. It definitely helps us reach bigger audiences and helps the show grow. But until next time, we'll see you in the next one.
See you soon.